What is going on, guys? The Inside the Blue podcast, and today we have some NHL content, and in particular, kind of my NHL Power Rankings, teams that have had an elite start, a great start, a good start, the mid start, and the bad start, and the awful start to their season. Now, I know, no team has really played 10 games, but I didn't really get a preseason rankings of what I thought teams were going to be, what teams weren't going to be, their expectations. That's going to tie into all these rankings, their expectations, my type of vibes for them, and overall how I see them kind of going forward in a way. But anyways, of course, we're going to bring a lot of NHL content for you guys. And another thing, we're starting off with the Colorado Avalanche. These are, of course, all the teams. We got Utah in there. We got the Seattle Kraken, of course, all those new teams. Seattle playing season last year, Utah transferring from Arizona. But getting into the Avalanche, of course, Nathan MacKinnon, Mikko Rantanen, a bunch of those guys. You would think that they'd have an elite start, but I don't have them having an elite start. Now, I think the problem with their start is their goaltending. Alexander Georgiev has not given them the starts that they anticipated. He was one of the highest goaltenders in wins last year. They made the playoffs last year, and I still think that this Avalanche team can be a playoff team. Of course, like I said, we've only played six, 7, maybe 8 games now. Maybe some teams have played 9. But I do have them kind of in the mid-start. And I'm going to put them in the mid-tier just because I think once Alexander Georgiev starts playing like an actual NHL goalie, they're going to probably move up to the good and maybe great tier. But as of now, I have them in that mid-tier, kind of mid-pack. But they have been winning games, right? They won 4 in a row, so you could make an argument that they're kind of at that good tier now, but kind of middle pack. And it's not just going off records, because you could have the best record and you might not be the best team. You may have a favorable schedule, all that type of stuff. But getting into the Chicago Blackhawks, a team that I didn't really have high expectations going into. I know I didn't make a video on it, but it's the Connor Bedard show. And this year is kind of another rebuilding year. Who's gonna fit in to the lineup? What line mates are gonna fit in with Connor Bedard? And of course, that team, they made some moves like Nick Foligno going to the team, Alec Martinez, a bunch of other teams. I have them just as awful start because I can't really put them in bad start because their expectations are low. So when your expectations aren't very high, you're not gonna have you're never gonna be in the bad tier, mid tier. You're just gonna be you're an awful NHL team. That's kind of the bottom line, is that the Blackhawks are not gonna have a sniff of being in the hunt for playoffs this year. They're not gonna be any sort of good team, and that's kind of what Columbus is too, in a way. Not high expectations. They have some young guys. They're starting to build something around Sean Monahan coming to the team from the Flames. Sorry, goaltending, in my opinion, is still a question mark. But I have them in the bad tier. Getting into the St. Louis Blues. Those are the teams, of course, upcoming. So the St. Louis Blues, of course, no more Craig Berube. They have, in my opinion, they actually have a pretty decent team. I think the Blues, I think they're starting to build something, and they're our first team in a good start. For the Blues, and I like their team a lot more than the other 3 teams so far. Jordan Binnington is, say what you want about the goalie. He's kind of like that mid-tier, good-tier goalie when he wants to play. Of course, he's a Stanley Cup champion, but that doesn't really take into account right now since I was from 2019. I like the Blues. So far. I like what they're doing. They're in a tight division with the Avalanche, Wild, all those type of teams. But let's get to the Boston Bruins, a team that, for the Boston Bruins, for me, I never know when they're going to fall off. And I don't think this is going to be a fall-off year whatsoever, but they haven't had a great start. But for me, the Boston Bruins, made a lot of moves, right? They moved on from Linus Ullmark. They got Nikita Zadorov. They got some more size in the defense. We saw that in the first game of the regular season against the Florida Panthers. And they've lost 3 in a row. Rocky start overall. Montgomery already barking at Marchand. So they're another team in kind of that mid-start. I still think they're going to be a good team, but they're going to be putting in the mid-start. Another team that I don't really think is very good in terms of power rankings, in terms of overall expectations, and overall vibes. And honestly, I have on my notes, I have them in the bad tier, but I don't think that's honestly right. I think I honestly have the Montreal Canadiens as more of an awful team so far. They're allowing around 34 shots a game. Montembeault has been busy behind the net. He got pulled against the Rangers. He allowed 3 goals in the first period. And we'll get into the Rangers later on. But there's just not enough on this team. It's a very young team led by Cole Caulfield, Nick Suzuki. Those are going to be your guys that are mainly going to get goals. You'll get some goals from Josh Anderson. You'll get some goals from Gallagher. But overall, it's just a very young team. And if you're Marty St. Louis, you have a tough job. Like, you have a pretty tough job there. He's been the coach for the last, 3 seasons now. So I think with how that thing goes, I don't think a coaching change is going to just automatically put them in a playoff position. It's going to be a process for sure. Getting into our next team, the Vancouver Canucks. Good team. Good team overall, in my opinion. And I think with the Canucks, they have something building. Of course, with Quinn Hughes, JT Miller having a good start, but it's when is Elias Pettersson gonna take that turn to become a better player and help this team out? I have the Canucks just at mid-tier so far because I think once Elias Pettersson can get going, they could be a good tier, great tier, all of that stuff. We're gonna put them in the mid-tier for now, but if there's a team that has gotten off to a hot start, had a great offseason, in my opinion, that's the Washington Capitals. The Washington Capitals, of course, are trying to make the playoffs as much as they can for Alexander Ovechkin and that fan base. And, of course, getting bounced in the first round, they made a lot of moves, right? Logan Thompson's their goalie. No more Darcy Kemper. They got Matt Roy, or Matt Waugh, whatever his name is. They got a few other guys. They got Pierre-Luc Dubois. Bunch of names, it's a solid team so far, and they're having a good year. I mean, they just beat the Devils. They know they're starting to learn how to win a lot, and they've had a good start. And for Washington, the Metro's tough, and to get off to a hot start like Washington has, it's a good look. It's a really good look for them, and I think that they could maybe be a top 4 finish if all being said and everything goes to plan. Of course, it's way too early to see who's going to win the Metro, win the Pacific, win the Atlantic, win all the divisions. But of course, the big storyline is Alexander Ovechkin getting to that Wayne Gretzky list. I fully believe he's going to break it eventually, whether it's this year, next year, or a year from now. I don't think he's going to honestly retire until he gets it. But getting into another team in the Metropolitan, that's the New Jersey Devils. And the New Jersey Devils, man, it's been a rocky start. They're getting Luke Hughes back. They're getting Brett Pesce back, so that's huge for them. So maybe they could turn around in the defense. Markstrom's been good. Jake Allen's their backup. I don't really have high vibes of Jake Allen, in my opinion. But it's the Devils, man. It's just it's a rocky start. And I think if you're a Devils fan, I think it's to stay calm. I think you guys can be perfectly fine, and you're gonna be in the mid tier. But I think you guys can be perfectly fine down the stretch. I know a lot of people had you guys winning the division. I think it's still early. I think you guys still have definitely a chance to catch the Rangers, Hurricanes, all that. I still think you're a good team, and I think all being said, once the Devils learn the Sheldon Keefe system and all of that, I think they're gonna be a good team. But if we're talking about good teams, the Anaheim Ducks are not in that. They're an awful team. They're allowing close to the same amount of shots per game like Montreal. Lucas Dostal's a good goalie, with John Gibson being out. They got some guys like Trevor Zegras, Cutter Gauthier, Mason McTavish, like guys like that. But they just don't have enough right now. And I think the draft, prospects, developing that system, and becoming an elite squad. I think they could be an elite squad down the road, years from now. Maybe they show some signs this year and they become an elite team. But as of now, not a great start for them. Calgary Flames. Great start. I have them in the great tier, just like Washington. A really fun team so far. Huberdeau's producing from a guy that put up so many points a few seasons ago. Then I had that rocky season. Then moves being made like Tkachuk being out, and they trade Gaudreau. Rest in peace to Johnny Gaudreau. And a few other guys they traded. Who else did they trade? They traded Dougie Hamilton a while ago, and a bunch of other guys. But I still think they're a great team. I think they're getting on. They look really good. And Calgary is a team that probably didn't have the highest expectations, in my opinion. With all the departures, Andrew Mangiapane, and a bunch of other guys, you probably wouldn't expect them to have a great start like this. Moving on from Jacob Markstrom, Dustin Wolf looks good, and overall they've had a fun year. But getting into another team that has had an awful start, that's the Philadelphia Flyers. Philadelphia Flyers have not been good. Matvei Michkov, though, great player. I think he's going to have a phenomenal future with the Philadelphia Flyers. Great young prospect. They can't score on the power play. When the power play is on, they can't do very much. And I know that's probably a lack of scoring, maybe, but there's a lot of reliance on Sean Couturier. There's a lot of reliance on Travis Konechny and a bunch of other guys. Goaltending is a question mark. There's a lot of teams so far that have question marks. Some of them already being named, like the Columbus Blue Jackets, Colorado Avalanche, the Blackhawks, if you want to say them. But getting into another team who I think has had a good start. Our second team in the good start, Vegas Golden Knights, right? They departed first. They departed from some players moving in, some players moving out. Overall, I still think this is a good team. I think they're definitely going to be a good team down the stretch. Getting into Carolina, I didn't have really much to say about Carolina. It feels like they have almost that same team with some minor moves. Like they got Jack Roslovic, they let Brady Shea go, which was probably smart for how much he's getting paid this year. But they are in another team that has had a good start. They're in the middle of the pack for the Metropolitan. I still think they're a good team with Freddie Anderson in that. Rob Brind'Amour is a good coach in my opinion. It feels like he just needs another superstar on that team. They traded for Jake Gensel, then he moves to the Tampa Bay Lightning. So that was kind of their big move, and it was kind of unfortunate for Carolina to not get him locked up and let him go to Tampa Bay. Getting into the Islanders. Bad start. When you've played 6 games, and despite being 2-2, and you've been shut out in half of them, I can't put you in mid-tier. I cannot put you at mid-tier if you have been shut out in 3 of your first 6 games, and I believe 2 of those you've lost 1-0. You lost 1-0 to the Detroit Red Wings in recent memory, and you put up 30 shots. So you put up 30 shots and you still find a way to lose. Anthony Duclair being out for a bit. Matt Barzal probably not scoring as much as you would like. Of course, it's still early. 6 games in. My worries with the Islanders aren't too much once they get Duclair back. And I think overall they're going to be a fine team down the stretch. But for now, they're in my bad tier. Getting into our first elite team, they're the only team that's undefeated. It's the Winnipeg Jets. The Winnipeg Jets, man. Connor Hellebuyck, of course, every year this guy's in the Vezina conversation. He's having a great start again. Kyle Connor's always a fun player. Mark Scheifele. Really didn't pay attention to the Jets offseason, so I didn't really know what they did besides trade away Rutger McGrady to the Pittsburgh Penguins. Overall, this is still an elite team. I mean, as long as Connor Hellebuck is your goalie, you're going to be probably an elite team. And I think that's for a lot of teams that have an elite goalie, like the Florida Panthers, like the New York Rangers. I mean, a bunch of teams that just have that elite team rely on their goalie. Getting into another team, let's start breezing through some of these teams. LA Kings, I have in a good tier as well. Good team overall. Despite Drew Doughty, their young player and Brent Clark has been amazing. The Seattle Kraken are in the mid-tier. I don't think they're going to be some special team. I don't think. I know they made some nice moves, but overall, they're going to be in the mid-tier. And for the Tampa Bay Lightning, I do have them in the great tier. I like their team a lot, and this is based off expectations, vibes. I love their team. I mean, Vasilevsky in goal. You just was it technically you traded and signed for Jake Gensel, a great move in the offseason to kind of replace Steven Stamkos, who went to the Nashville Predators. We'll get into Nashville later, but I really like the vibes for the Tampa Bay Lightning. Getting into the Toronto Maple Leafs. Good start. I mean, good start. I wouldn't put them in mid. I'd say they're a good team overall. I mean, Matthews, of course, is going to score a lot of goals for them. The defense, I like the Chris Tanev move a lot. I think he's a great player, great in the playoffs, obviously, great at blocking shots. He's like your great stay-home defenseman. Getting into the Edmonton Oilers, bad start. I was considering putting them in the awful start, but they've done this before. They've started off poor, and then Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl just go for 140 points to end their season. And, I mean, as long as Connor McDavid produces how he does, this is going to be a playoff team, and they're going to make moves at the deadline when it comes to that. But overall, I mean, 6-7 games in, nothing too worrisome. Getting into our next team, the Stanley Cup champions, I have them as a good start. Good start. They just beat up the Rangers, which is a big win. But, of course, injuries and other stuff are kind of holding them back. So I'm just going to put them as a good tier. Still could definitely make an argument for being a great team so far, but I'm going to put them as a good team. Pittsburgh Penguins are a bad team. They're a bad team. And that starts off with having an old core. You have an old core with Evgeny Malkin, who's old but can still produce. He can still produce at an elite level, but he's on the older hand. Sidney Crosby, like I said, he's older, but he's still an elite player. I mean, he's still a top 10 center in the NHL easily, and he still produces at a very good level. Goaltending is their main issue, and I kind of expect Mike Sullivan to probably be fired at the end of the year or at the midseason mark, depending how their season's going. And you could honestly maybe make a case that Kyle Dubas's seat is maybe getting a little hot. Because if you're not going to get younger and you're going to try and go all in, not sure if that's the best business move. But getting into the Nashville Predators, who made a lot of moves, a lot of money moves. Not sure they're paying off right now, but Brady Shea, mega move. Jonathan Marchessault, a big move. Brady Shea, Jonathan Marchessault, Steven Stamkos. They're playing franchise mode. They're playing franchise mode right now, and it's the reason why I have them as an awful team so far. When you spend that much money in an offseason on older players, you can't expect to be good right out of the gate. Now, Steven Stamkos is great. They have good players, but they're just not putting it all together. Getting into the New York Rangers, another team that's in the elite tier list with the Winnipeg Jets. They've looked great so far, despite losing to the Florida Panthers. They were bound to lose a game eventually, and they lose to a team that they lost in the playoffs last year. And also, Sergei Bobrovsky in that game was unbelievable. Artemi Panarin's elite. And Alexei Lafreniere is taking another step forward, 6 points through 5 games. Or now I think it's 6 points in 6 games now, something like that. Detroit, Hockey Town. Where do I have you on my list? I have you as... I have you as a mid-tier. They have the talent to do it. They definitely have the talent to do it. but overall they just don't have enough. It feels like to say that, but they have a young squad, they have some guys that can play, but they just haven't put it all together yet. I think they can, and I think they could definitely win games in the weirdest ways. I mean, they beat the New York Islanders by just putting up 11 shots on goal, and that's with Patty Kane, that's with Vladimir Tarasenko, Alex DeBrincat, Dylan Larkin. So for those guys to not even put up more than 20 shots is crazy to me. Getting into another team, the Buffalo Sabres. We have them in a looking. We have them in the mid-tier. Another mid-tier team. Overall, we're also probably going to throw in the just the Sabres for now. With that, Utah, of course, we'll get into them later. Senators later. Buffalo's a weird team. I mean, they have so much talent. They have young talent, so much young talent. It's a young team. So when you're a young team and you take it on veteran teams, you're probably going to get beat, and you're in a very tough division. Getting into the Senators. Good start. Good start for the Washington. Good start for the Senators. A lot of fun. Linus Ullmark's got the job, and he's done some great things overall. Getting into the Sharks, awful. I mean, Macklin Celebrini is a fun player. We know that. But overall, they're just not there. They have a lot of years of rebuilding. But if there's a team that doesn't need a rebuild right now, that's the Dallas Stars. Really solid start. They're in that elite tier with the New York Rangers and the Winnipeg Jets. Just an elite goalie to rely on. Logan Stankoven's been great. Just overall, just everything has just been really, really solid for them. And getting into another team, the Utah Hockey Club, we have them in the mid-tier start. Another team in the mid-tier, and finishing out the Wild with a with an elite start. With a great start. Sorry. So that's the wrap up. There it is. A lot of teams. A lot of scattered around. It seems like mostly we have 5 teams for almost all, except for elite, great. But overall, guys, that's going to do it for this Power Rankings tier list. We'll have another one probably in when it gets to 15, 20 games, something like that. See where the vibes are, see where teams change, maybe we see a struggle, maybe we see teams like the Devils take a jump up, or Carolina, or of course Florida to just dominate over the next weeks of play. But that's going to do it for this episode. Of course, smash that like button on the road to 300 subscribers. And of course, leave a comment of where you think some teams land, where you're in disagreement with me. Of course, always love chatting with you guys in the comments. But that's going to do it, of course. And that's going to do it. And I will see you guys in the next one. Peace.